The outrage over the killing of Alex Preddy is flooding into typically apolitical spaces, from online forums for cat lovers and bourbon aficionados to the highest levels of the world of sports. At the Olympics, Italian officials have reacted with outrage over the news that ICE will accompany the U.S. delegation there. ICE out signs have appeared on the stands of NBA games in Minnesota. And take a listen to San Antonio Spurs star, French-born Victor Wembanyama, reacting to the events in Minnesota.
PR has tried, but I'm not going to sit here and give some politically correct, I know, every day I wake up and see the news and I'm horrified. I think that it's crazy that some people might make it seem like, or make it sound like it's acceptable. The murder of civilians is acceptable, Every day, I read the news and sometimes I'm asking very deep questions about my own life. I know I'm a foreigner. I live in this country, and I am concerned for sure.
I want to bring in MS Now international reporter Ines de la Cuchera. Also with us, contributing editor at New York Magazine and columnist for The Washington Post, Will Leitch. He is the founder of Deadspin sports blog. Will, we know it's not just Wemby. Indiana Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton, point blank, wrote that Alex Preddy was murdered. New York Knicks player Karl Anthony Towns, who used to play for the Timberwolves, said he stands with the people of Minnesota. All these players right now, these days, they're media trained, but they feel compelled to stand up. And it reminds me, I can't help but think about the iconic image of Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fists at the 1968 Summer Olympics. Clear sign of defiance to the racial injustice in the U.S. Are we back there again?
Traditionally, sports does, athletes do try to stay out of this as much as they can. And sometimes for practical reasons, it's very difficult to be an athlete. They're very busy in a lot of ways. But this is the most we've seen really since 2020, right? Let's not forget that, the Milwaukee Bucks actually decided not to play a playoff game in the bubble in 2020 in the wake of the shooting of a man in Wisconsin. So I think clearly we have seen this more recently. I think since the re-election of Trump, there's been a lot of hesitance in the athletics world across the board. You've seen people like Steve Kerr or Doc Rivers, people are traditionally involved in politics. They've been speaking up, but generally speaking, a lot of athletes have stayed out of it. That has clearly changed in this. Again, Tyrese Halliburton is not someone who is traditionally very loud about politics at all, nor is Karl Anthony Towns. Neither is Victor Wembanyama. And I think that as you've seen across culture in general, you're seeing people that traditionally stay out of this stuff feeling compelled to speak up. And I think that speaks to how athletes understand the platform they have and kind of want to use their voices.
Ines, ICE is generating a lot of controversy in Italy before the Winter Olympics next month because, as I said, they'll be with the U.S. delegation. What kind of reaction is happening there?
Yeah, Chris, that news is being met by shock and outrage from residents of Milan. I will say this is not the same branch of ICE that's been involved in this immigration crackdown in the U.S. We're talking about a branch that's known as Homeland Security Investigations. We understand this is a branch that already has a presence in some countries. They typically deal with things like drug smuggling, the smuggling of cultural artifacts or human trafficking. DHS did release a statement to say that in this case, they were not going to be participating in any kind of immigration enforcement operations. We understand instead they might be set up at a control room at the U.S. consulate in Milan, for example, working with other U.S. law enforcement agencies to try and keep an eye on security. I will say I covered the Paris Olympics. I remember seeing LAPD officers on the ground on the Champs-Elysees. I did go into the control room at the U.S. Embassy in Paris, where I did see all these law enforcement agencies working together to keep Paris safe. So that part of it is not unheard of. But of course, the very fact that ICE will have a presence in Milan is drawing outrage from some residents. I'll let you listen to what they had to say.
Non li vogliamo assolutamente, non vogliamo questo mondo, quindi che li tengano, anzi li rinchiudano tutti perché sono dei pazzi, nazisti, fascisti e poco.
Speriamo che facciano solo da scorta a chi di dovere e che non ci siano gesta pericolose, insomma. E mi sono meravigliato che in America stia accadendo quello che accade, un paese che è la patria della democrazia.
So you heard it there. Some residents saying they don't want ICE on the ground. They think ICE should be locked up. That woman saying that she thinks they are fascists, that calling them fascists would be an understatement. That other resident talking about how he's been surprised to see the images coming out of Minnesota. We heard from the Milan mayor as well, talking about how ICE is not welcome in Milan, how ICE is a police force that acts with complete illegality. And I think the pushback you're seeing really underscores the very tense relationship at the moment between the U.S. and its close traditional allies.
Will, has the U.S., which is traditionally the big star of the games, become the villain?
You know, you're starting to see this. You started to see this really before this. You know, this is particularly urgent with the number of events that the United States will be hosting, including the World Cup this year. I think people kind of can't help to see what's going on here and wonder what's going to happen when the entire world kind of comes in. This is not entirely, of course, unprecedented in sports as well. If, you know, one you will note when you watch the Winter Olympics, Russia is not there, for example. If you watch the Australian Open, Russian athletes are not allowed to pad the country's flag. They're like a non-country status. And I think you've seen that since the invasion of Ukraine with Russia. I don't think the United States is quite there yet, but certainly when you're hearing calls from Sepp Blatter, the former head of FIFA, who, you know, has his own ethical issues. Certainly when you have the head of FIFA sometimes coming on the side of ethos, you may be on the wrong side. But certainly when you hear him saying something like, maybe we should consider a boycott of the World Cup, some of these European countries, it speaks to really what, interestingly, the way everyone was kind of talking about Russia just 3 or 4 years ago in the world of sport.
Let me ask you finally, in less than 2 weeks, of course, we're going to have a Super Bowl winner. I have my own thoughts about that, but that's neither here nor there. You do wonder, though, you know, folks get invited to the White House after they win a major sporting event here, and if some of them will stay home.
Certainly, you've seen this. You know, the NBA teams, for example, they stopped going when Trump's first time in office, came back when Biden, and then did not come back Oklahoma City last year. Baseball teams have typically gone. NFL teams have typically gone, though often we've seen a lot of athletes step out. Jalen Hurts, for example, last year with the Eagles did not come back. A lot of his teammates were actually more explicit than he was about how he was not willing to visit the White House. You've seen actually often among racial lines, certain players going to the White House and not. And obviously, if you'll remember, LeBron James quite famously got in a public tiff with Trump in his first time in office about how he said it used to be an honor until you got there. So certainly, it is a different environment than what was traditionally just kind of a ceremonial sort of notion, a political idea that's clearly changed in a lot of different ways.